the title of the message is Building with Patience. Building with Patience. And giving an example, if you are, and you guys may want to write this down, if you are headed in the right direction, you will get opposition. If you're on the road to making a difference in the kingdom of heaven, the enemy will show up somewhere in the process. And just like we were talking yesterday, we started handing out information on getting organizations and creating resources, and we had an unimaginable amount of technical difficulty. People just couldn't hear. They couldn't get the scriptures out. It just started happening, like not just one person's line, several lines. So that tells you the enemy is just, sitting there, just like we're sitting there listening and doing our part. He's sitting there pushing buttons to try to distract and disturb what we're doing. And patience means once you realize what the warfare is, it helps you to assess, oh, okay, now I understand what's going on. And you can just kind of resettle in. And sometimes success is getting the technology to work, and that's a successful day. So sometimes you have to measure. The reason I'm saying that is you can have a plan. You can say, in 5 days, I'm going to complete these tasks. I wouldn't advise you to say it out loud. I would advise you always to pray your plans. Don't just announce them even if you're in the house by yourself, because you'll start drawing enemy fire and not realize it. And just like you're praying your plans out, the enemy's sitting there listening to your prayers if you're praying in English out loud. And he'll say, okay, Wednesday, he'll sit and listen, and we'll construct a counter attack based on what just came out your mouth. So you want to pray about things, and that's why your heavenly language is so powerful and important, because you got it, God got it, heaven got it, but the enemy, it missed the enemy. He wasn't able to take notes on what you're getting ready to do, because you are really pushing in. You're pushing in the spirit realm way before it hits the physical, and it will work. It will complete the thing you set your mind to do. It will come to pass. So the enemy's not fighting thin air. He knows that faith spoken and the faith acted upon becomes a very powerful tool. So he knows that. So patience means measuring your win. Sometimes, like I said, measuring your win. I know when I was talking to Shantae last week, and we were talking about her son, then I realized that measuring your win is different for everybody. So she was measuring her win that her son got to go home, which is a very big deal. But at the same time, hold on one second. Okay, hold on. I have to read the rest of I'll read the rest of your text, Lori, when I get back, when I finish. But the measuring your win, for her, was her son coming home, which for most people that wouldn't be a big deal. But for her, considering where she started from, what all had happened, wins are relevant to the task. Wins are relevant to the battle. So how big was the battle? Sometimes opening up your eyes is a win. You remember I was giving you the discussion about the special ed children that the conversations they have compared to the teachers with the other students. They'll be saying, well, little Johnny understood algebra, or he was able to do such and such. And then another teacher will have her version of a win is getting the child to hold the spoon and grip the spoon and not drop it, or getting eye contact with a child that has autism or something. Their wins are relevant. Write that down. Wins are relevant. WINS are relevant to the battle. Sometimes it's just getting, like Dory said, getting a stake in the ground, establishing your territory. That's a win. Just being fixed on where you're not going to move off of, just taking ground is a win. Wins are relevant. So you have to know how to thank God and recognize the win, and patience is a part of it. Sometimes not losing ground is a win. Not losing ground is a win. Not that Johnny or Jill got A's or B's. They just showed up to class is a win. It's relevant to what they have to press into and pull away from. It's relevant to what. So look at the whole thing. If you start looking at your wins in relevant context, you start thanking God, because technically none of us could even be here. We've all had near-death experiences where if it had gone 2 or 3 degrees in either direction, we'd be out of here. If we had not missed that stop sign and gone to the next stop sign, if the other guy couldn't stop her, or if we couldn't stop coughing, or somebody didn't come pat us on the back and help us to stop choking. It's a whole lot of things that we have been victorious in and don't realize it. The fact that we're here, because as you look around and know, it's not a guarantee that we are all pretty much on the prayer line. I haven't had anybody on the prayer line, has been impacted when I directly, thank God, all of us are doing pretty good. So, I mean, I'm not talking about the challenges at home or whatever else, but they're not dropping like flies on the prayer line. We're not dropping like flies. So, a win. These are wins. So like I said, wins are relevant. But when you're fighting the enemy, patience, the reason you have to be patient is you can have an agenda line item, and you can say, well, it should be done by this, and this time. And one time I had was putting out a magazine a couple issues ago, and one of our writers was like, when is it coming out? When is it coming out? She wanted to, see it finished. And I could not there was one we were doing on Maya Angelou. Could not get it finished. It just kept pushing. Kept being resistance. And I've learned now to just, when it starts being resistance, I slow down and let God take over, because there is a reason, and I don't know the reason. He doesn't have to explain the reason, but I know enough to know when I start seeing a slowdown from all different directions, I need to pay attention. And it literally happens like a symphony. Everybody will start getting glitches and slowing down, and I slow down. So I can pray over the thing so that it can come to fruition, because information that hits these pages is important. Somebody is already set up to read them. We don't know who they are, but somebody is. So we did that. She kept saying, well, it should be out. And I said, I'm not going to. And I started thinking, well, yeah, it should be out, getting all anxious. And I stopped and I said, nope, this is a spirit-based process. And God is in control, and there's a spiritual element that I cannot explain on paper, but it works out perfectly every time, and it causes tremendous opportunities to occur, just manifest out of vapor. They just happen. And so so what happened was I was looking for something on Maya Angelou, and lo and behold, the next morning I woke up, the day I had that prayer, and said, Lord, why is it taking so long? What's the holdup? And so the next morning I woke up and went on, for whatever reason, I got up at 3 in the morning and Googled Maya Angelou, and there it was, an article called The Holiness of Maya Angelou, written by a woman from the South, on a Christian magazine. She has no idea that I was waiting for her article. She had no idea. She had no idea. The word holiness is something that would naturally grab my attention, but the holiness of Maya Angelou, and it talked about Maya Angelou's books being biblical caricatures that she uses, and she tells Bible stories in modern day format. And I thought, wow. And here she's getting it. She got it. And she wrote that article, and that became our premier article in that particular magazine. And I couldn't explain it to save my life. This happened on the 24th, and she wrote the article on the 23rd and published it. And I saw it the next morning right there. And I thought, goodness, isn't this amazing? And that happens all the time. God has amazing timing. So patience is something you have to let God is in control. He's not tied to man's agenda. Sometimes we get stuck on agendas, and business people, and even in church, if you have a service at 8, a service at 10, and a service at 12, you didn't leave no room for the movement of God. You didn't leave any room for the Lord to come sweeping through the sanctuary and hold everybody up and hold suspended stillness of the presence of God. You didn't leave room for God. You have to leave room for Him. He's not in a rush. Your agenda, this timing is not. God doesn't have to move. Let me say this. He created time. Why is he going to be subjected to it? Think about it. He created time. Why is he going to be obeying time? Oh, time obeys him. Write that down. Time obeys God. God created time. Time obeys God. He does not obey, has to obey time. He has it set up so you can meet him at a certain place at a certain time, but he can stay as long as he wants. And if you make room for God in your life like that he can stay as long as he wants, you'll be surprised at how many visits you will get because he's a king. He's, he doesn't function. You don't just bringing it down to everyday. You don't tell Queen Elizabeth or the Pope, okay, I'm going to meet with you for 10 minutes, and at 10:01 or one minute after that 10 minutes, I gotta go. You wouldn't dare. Because why? Because you realize who you're talking to, whose time is more valuable. So if God decides to visit you, you guess what you need to do? You need to decide to make room for him to visit. Like that rich guy that when Jesus was passing by, he and I cannot think of his name, he, smart as he was a short man, got up in a tree so he could see Jesus. Smart. I know he's coming this way. And Jesus had an entourage and a crowd and crowd pressing on him, everything. He was a superstar. And he got up in a tree to look down and see Jesus. And then Jesus looked up at him and said, I'm coming to your house. And so then the guy, imagine if he was so excited and starstruck that he gets in a tree to talk to Jesus. And then Jesus, the very one, Zacchaeus, thank you, Vivian. So, Jackie, everybody says Zacchaeus. Okay. My Bible scholars, thank you guys. And I got a whole bunch of Zacchaeus come. So he looked up and said, I'm coming to your house. Now imagine if this man was so excited that he wanted to see Jesus like a rock star. Oh, if I could, Mike Jagger, the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix. I'm thinking people out of the 60s. You guys probably don't know anything about those people. But anyway, let me see. Michael Jackson or whatever. But you see it, like you get up in a tree looking down like, oh, goodness, I want to see if I can. You would be so happy. And what if they looked up and looked you in your eyeballs and called your name out and said, I'm coming to your house? You would have scurried down that tree, ran home, took your cell phone out. Zacchaeus didn't have a cell phone back then. But if he did, he would be calling his maid and say, hook up dinner because Jesus is coming by our house. And they would have said, what? He's coming to our house? Oh, my God. And everybody would have just in a scurry. Because not only Jesus is coming, all the disciples are coming, the little entourage. So they got to make dinner for quite a few people because Jesus rolled out with a lot of people. He wasn't by himself. He was a rock star. So he says, I'm coming to your house. And guess what? The rich guy could afford to throw an instant party because he had money like that. He probably had some cows or lambs out in the backyard on the side, had a big old table. He was used to entertaining, so it was nothing for them to just go, let's whip it up. We're getting ready to do, and then tell a few friends, Jesus is coming by my house. And then after Jesus had came, hung out, talked, private little group of training. Nobody wrote it down. I don't know what he said when he went to his house, but he sat around and talked, and this guy was highly honored to have Jesus in his house. And then after several days or weeks after, he probably invited his friends over and walked them through and said, and Jesus sat right there, and then the disciples of Peter and Andrew and Matthew, they sat over here, and they said, and we were talking, and then Peter, and then Jesus did, because see, Zacchaeus, what did we say? Zacchaeus was animated, else he would have never climbed up in that tree. If he was just real staunchy and real safe, he would have just tiptoed and see if he could see him. But he got up in a tree so he could see Jesus. So he probably is talking about this thing for several days after. His grandchildren probably knew Jesus had been at his house. And he talked about it and just brought people in and said, well, what did you say? And what did he say? And he just kept on elaborating on it. And then the maids were probably saying, and then Jesus was here, and oh, he did it. And you know how people talk. So there's a whole story, back end story about Jesus having come to his house, but all because he was willing to climb up in the tree and strain and press to see as much as he can because he understood the value of the presence of God walking where he was walking. He was going to get him some one way or the other. That's how you should be about the plans of God. And that's why I said do it with patience. God is a rock star in your life. However he wants to move, learn how to cooperate with the movement of God. Don't be those, if you have a church service or you have a meeting and nobody knows Jesus, knows the presence of God, they will literally plow through that meeting, say a prayer, da 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 da, da amen, okay, da, da, okay, we voted, and God wasn't nowhere in the meeting. But if you have a meeting where the presence of God just kind of enters in when you enter in, and the planning is done under the anointing, and there's conversations and flows of ideas and creativity is just jumping off the table, those are the meetings that God is in. Those are the ways that God is in the midst of it. You need to know before you do anything. If you don't know anything more than you know your own name, you need to know how the presence of God moves. You need to be able to smell the presence of God, to feel in the spirit realm, smell the presence of God, feel him moving, know when he's entering in, because things can look exactly the same and then there'll be a shift in the atmosphere and God is on the move. You'll start like what happened the other day. Vivian said, is God in control? Somebody asked her if God is in control. And we start talking about, is God in control? And I promise you, and Gloria was a witness, I promise you we were sitting there and Kenneth Copeland's tape says right on the screen, I was sitting there, we were sitting there talking, right up on the screen, God is in control. Just like right there. Like I didn't have to think about it. Didn't have to. It's set on the screen the whole time we were talking about it. Like, excuse me, like just look up at the screen, and it was right there. God is in control. I was like, okay. Sometimes he talks with a symphony of situations. He uses everything. So if you're patient, if you can be still and include him in the process, and include the movement of God in the process, you'll see some stuff. And things will happen. Okay, so we're getting ready to read these scriptures, and that this was called building with patience, measuring your wins. Wins are relevant to the battle. Wins are relevant, WINS, are relevant to the battle. And some people measure a win by somebody standing up and walking. Some people measure a win by somebody going home from the hospital. Some people measure a win by hitting the lottery or whatever they're doing. But wins are relevant. Sometimes if a person opens up their eyes the next morning, that's a super win. Wins are relevant. So be patient, pay attention, and count your blessings present right now. Count your blessings right now, because you're looking at some wins. And if you pay attention to them, you won't miss them. They'll give you something to praise God for. I told you, every time you break into praise, God is all in the midst of that. You start praising him, he'll start showing up at your house. If you write that, you want to write that down too. You start praising him, he will start showing up at your house. If you start praising him, he will start showing up at your house, because you're talking about something that's important. You're talking about him.